Hello, parents. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you don't know who I am, I'm Dr. Mike Beck. I'm the principal at Mahtomedi Middle School. This video is going to be some information that some of you may have heard already. Some of it's going to be information that if you have children in other schools, you have heard those presentations as well. But I'm going to try to curtail this in this presentation and really talk about the specifics at the middle school. And so my purpose today is an overview of the three models, which you may or may not have heard of already, how they will look here at the middle school. I want to communicate some safety and health measures that we'll be taking for our students and staff, and answer any questions or some popular questions that we've had from parent surveys. The planning process has been happening since we left school last spring. We've had to come up with three learning models. We've had to work with the Department of Education, as well as last week, Governor Walz put out the executive order, so we have some parameters to work through. And we've also taken feedback from staff and families, as well as working with surrounding communities and their districts to come up with the best ideas to develop a plan that will best suit our students and staff. This is a really overview of the three learning models. Over the next few weeks, we'll continue to provide additional information and expectations as they are developed. Really the three learning models are model one is in person, where all the students will be back here, and we're going through their schedule as kind of what people would consider as close to normal as possible. Model two is a hybrid where they're partly in for some of the week they're in school in face to face with a teacher, and at home doing distance learning the other part of the week. And model three is total distance learning from home, and we would like to call it distance learning 2.0, because we learned a lot in the spring from students and families and from staff, and how to improve distance learning this fall. So we'll be using the COVID-19 metrics according to our county to decide which model we will be in. And it may be that we're in in all three models throughout the year. So we have to develop a program that's going to be flexible, and be able to transition through each of those models as kids come and go, and also provide continuous learning along the way. But remember, families, you may request a distance learning plan if you do not wish to participate in in-person learning. Students who need to quarantine throughout the year, you will be able to go into a distance learning during your exclusion period. We want to take the health and safety of our students and staff very seriously, so we will be having face coverings not only here in school but on our transportation as well, on our buses. We will be following MDH guidelines for cleaning and sanitizing our rooms, our hallways, our bathrooms, our lunchrooms, and so forth. And then also for screening, we're asking that families do the screening in the morning. We'll be giving you information on what sort of symptoms to look for, and if your child is showing those symptoms, to please keep them home. Staff will also be responsible for doing their own health checks, but we'll also be training staff to look at students and observe students throughout the day. And if they are starting to show some symptoms, to be able to work with our health office. We'll be following the MDH guidelines again for exclusion from school and notification to our school community when someone does have a positive COVID test. Our health office is being reconfigured to be safer for students, and each building will have a designated isolation space for when kids do come down with symptoms throughout the school day. Some other noteworthy practices is that, especially in the hybrid model, our classrooms are being configured so that only 50% of kids can be in there for, and I'll show you a picture of that later. We are going to be asking staff to use outdoor spaces as much as possible. We'll be doing social distancing stickers and traffic flow arrows around school. We'll have signs up reminding kids about masks, hygiene, washing hands, those things to be preventative. You'll also see that we're going to not have as many large gatherings, and we're going to, if we cannot especially if we cannot social distance in those gatherings, we will not be having them. We're going to limit the building visitors, and we'll be having entrances specifically for grade levels and stairwells specifically for grade levels for the most part to try to separate our students by grade level as much as possible in case there is a COVID positive test. We are able to do tracing more simply. We please keep checking our websites for individual supplies. As we gain more information about what's safe and what's needed, we'll be putting them on the supply list. We will be giving students Chromebooks, individual Chromebooks, so that they do not have to share devices. We'll be asking students to have backpacks to hold their materials and not allow lockers until it gets colder in the year. And then, but please remember that students, if they bring their individual supplies, will have to keep them in their backpacks with them throughout the day. For transportation in the hybrid model, especially, can only operate at 50% capacity. Our buses will be clean. Drivers and students will have to wear masks while they're on the bus. And we'll be working with our parents here and out in front for drop off and pickups to try to allow for more students and to be picked up so we can get a faster rate of getting cars in and out of our parking lot safely. For lunches, we'll be having pre-packed bag breakfasts and lunches available through our nutrition services. We will be utilizing our cafeteria for lunchroom or for the lunches, but we're also going to utilize part of our gym so that we can safely social distance and space kids out, which is going to be important for middle school kids because we know how much they like to socialize together, but we'll still be keeping them in cohorts within the lunch rooms. Again, just for social distancing purposes and for tracing purposes. Our staff in the lunchrooms will be expected to wear masks and face coverings as well. And if your students are in distance learning, you may come up to school and pick up a prepackaged meal as well. And no matter what form of learning we're going to do with what model, we will provide educational excellence by having 5 days of continuous learning, having a consistent course and content expectations, building relationships with our staff that foster academic and social emotional growth, engagement, and feedback, having a structure that supports staff, students, and families to minimize new transitions, and giving opportunities for academic reflection, exploration, and agency in student learning. In distance learning, we want to make sure that we have continuous learning every day. We're going to have online daily instruction with teachers, face to face and recorded lessons to provide flexibility, online and small group instruction, and independent practice and feedback. As you can see, this would be a sample of this is a sixth grade math classroom right now, and you can see how the kids are spread out along with the teacher. So in person for our secondary, again, I'm talking about middle school and high school because we share staff, and so we have to be on similar schedules. And so we'll be starting the school day at 9 o'clock. And right now we're tentatively scheduled for 2:30, but as we work through more details, that schedule may get pushed back slightly to past 2:30. Again, for in-person, kids will be here every day, and for continuous learning, we'll be staggering passing times in the hallways, and again, entry and exit to our school. Kids will be using masks, and we'll be practicing hygiene and teaching kids how to do that. In a hybrid model, again, we're starting at 9 o'clock. We will again have 5 days of continuous learning. All secondary students are in person for 2 days and distance learning for 3 days. And I will show you that in just a minute. And because of capacity limits for hybrid, 50% of our students will be in the building each day. 50% will be engaged in a structured distance learning format. And on the fifth day, which presently is on Fridays, all students will be engaged in a face-to-face instruction in a Google Meet distance learning format. We'll be using secondary students will be using Google Classroom, and we're finding ways to formalize that so it's easier for students and parents to follow assignments and find assignments and be able to turn in assignments. Also, again, the distance learning format will be a continuous everyday learning and include all those things that I mentioned before. So here's our schedule for hybrid. It will be a 3-period block schedule. So students will be assigned to a blue group or the gold group. The blue group will be here in school, face to face with their teachers on Monday and Wednesday. The gold group on Tuesday and Thursday. Students will be assigned to 6 different periods, 6 different classes: math, science, social studies, and English, one allied, and then their hour, and then 1 hour of band and or music and FIED. So as you can see, though, we are having 90-minute periods and not just 45. So students are in 3 classes per week in each day. So if I'm in the blue group and I am in period 1, I am in person here at school and I'm with my teacher for 90 minutes. So essentially, I'm going to be covering 2 lessons in 90 minutes. And then also, if I'm in class, then my classmate who's on the blue and the gold group, they are at home doing distance learning. What that means is we will be having a Google Meet and a live webcam inside the classroom. The students at home will be expected to log in and join the class and go through the lesson with the teacher. And then when it comes to practice time, the teacher will be available for the chat aspect or the chat part of the Google Meet, but they will also be there face to face with the kids from the blue group. So if, for example, if there are 30 kids in a class, first hour per se, let's just say 15 of them are in school with the teacher, 15 are at home. Then the next day on Tuesday, they're not doing the same lesson, they're doing the next lesson. And so that's why it's important for kids to be able to log on from home and be a part of that in-class lesson. And so we will be doing that. So the reason why we're only having 3 classes per week, so they'll have periods 1, 3, and 5 for the whole 5 days. That way our teachers can meet with the students in person for 2 days, and they'll meet with the kids through distance learning for 3 days and be able to give them focused, intensive feedback, since we're covering essentially 2 weeks of material in that 1 week. We feel that for students and for parents at home, this will be a lot easier to manage than it would be if you had 6 periods to cover for each week. For distance learning, we'll be following the same type of schedule and model that we would be for hybrid, where we would be having 3 periods each week of more intensive work, and so that it's easier for students and parents to follow and organize. But no matter what model we're going to use, our K-12 expectations are that our priority standards will be the focus, instruction by the teacher using modeling and feedback. There's going to be opportunities to practice with feedback from the teacher, ongoing assessment to monitor growth, excuse me, small group instruction to differentiate instruction and meet individual needs. And we'll be using Google Classroom as the platform for all learning assignments. So here are some questions that were brought up from the parent survey. How will students be screened? Again, I mentioned that earlier. Please do the screening at home, and if they have symptoms, please keep them at home. And what will be the exclusion practice for our schools? Again, we'll be working closely with MDH if we have a positive case, and working with them on notification and when and how do we close down school if need be. Mask coverings are required, and then how will you encourage students to wear masks? We'll be working with students, educating them, and we'll also be good models as adults in our building, wearing our own mask and face coverings. The school day, why the adjustment to 9 o'clock? It has to do with the elementary, and so real briefly, elementary is not having the MAC daycare program in the morning before school because of cleaning purposes and to try to get the day off or the day started in most classes right away. without having to clean them. So, and also to help provide support for families who work outside the home and will need to return to work in person. So our elementary schools are starting earlier in the day, and because we have a two-tier transportation model, there needs some time between elementary start and secondary start. So that is why we are starting at 9 o'clock. How about aligning siblings? If I have children in different schools, is it possible to align distance learning days? On the enrollment form, which you will also receive, students will be, or families will be asked if they prefer to have children to have their distance learning days aligned. We know that sometimes you're going to need older siblings to help watch the younger siblings, and so we will do our best to honor those requests for families, but we cannot do it for friends. For after school activities, I know there was a high school announcement today for after school in middle school. We will be working on that, trying to figure out how we can do that safely. And those activities never started until after school started anyway. So please stay tuned if we're able to have any sports or activities for our kids after school. And then changing from hybrid to distance learning, will families be able to switch? Yes. If families feel uncomfortable with in-person learning under the in-person hybrid model, families can request a learning plan, a distance learning plan. We will communicate with families in the future about time periods when they may request a switch. Students who need to be quarantined if they're here for in-person or hybrid, and they need to be quarantined, they will be able to do distance learning for that exclusion period. Again, we will be having devices. We will expect secondary students to use their devices throughout the day in all three models, and secondary students will be able to bring their devices back and forth between home and school. Here are some additional resources, and they will be on our district website as well. If you have more questions, you can always email me. If you have questions, I will do the best to respond back. But we'll be continuing to have videos and information sent home to you as our plan becomes more concrete. So thank you again for taking the time to listen to this and be part of it. And we're looking forward to your students to be in school here in whichever model that we're going to be doing. We are looking forward to get started and get to know your students. Thank you again, and have a great night.